Our marriage fell apart over a 15.98 won bag of spiced broad beans. The supermarket was packed on weekends. Li Mei and I had strolled over after dinner to pick up some groceries. I pushed the shopping cart, following right behind Li Mei. She was in a good mood that day, tossing things into the cart as we walked. Durian, 2 bags each of 3 flavors of beef jerky, and 4 family-size bags of potato chips. Chocolate, yogurt, cherries, duck necks, pickled pepper chicken feet. All kinds of random stuff, all her favorites. I glanced at the overflowing cart and said nothing. We'd been married almost a year, and I was used to this by now. There were 7 or 8 people in line at the checkout, so I inched forward slowly with the cart. Li Mei stood beside me, scrolling through her phone, not looking up once. Next to the checkout was a promotional display rack stacked with bags of spiced broad beans. The packaging looked plain and dated, clearly an old local brand. The price tag read 15.98 yuan. I paused for a second. I hadn't seen these in years. My dad used to buy them all the time when I was little. He said the more you chewed them, the better they tasted, and the 2 of us could sit there snacking on them all afternoon. I grabbed a bag on impulse and dropped it into the cart. Li Mei tore her eyes away from her phone, glanced at the cart, reached in, pulled the bag of broad beans out, and set it back on the rack. What was that for? I said. What do you mean, what for? She frowned at me. I picked the bag up again, and put it back in the cart. Just 1 bag. I want to try them. She pulled it out again and set it back, harder this time. They taste gross. I want them. I haven't had them in forever. They give you bad breath and gas. There were a lot of people in line and I didn't want to make a scene. I bit back my irritation and put the bag back in the cart again. You don't have to eat them. I will. It's just 1 bag. Is it really that big a deal? Li Mei snatched the bag right out of my hand and slammed it back onto the shelf. The loud crack made the people in front of us turn around to look. That was when my temper snapped. I walked over and picked it up again, and she followed, reaching to yank it away from me. We stood right there by the checkout, each holding one end of the bag, locked in a stupid little tug of war, neither of us willing to let go. Xiaolei, Li Mei's voice rose sharply. Put it back. I said I want them. What's wrong with buying 1 bag? I raised my voice too. I told you, they make you gassy, and they're bad for you. I never complained about that expensive durian you bought that smells like garbage. These broad beans are cheap and good. What's your problem with me buying 1 bag? Li Mei's face flushed bright red. She let go, gave me a cold look, then pushed the cart past me and started dumping all the items onto the checkout counter with a clatter. Buy it yourself if you want it so bad. With that, she ignored me and scanned and paid for everything on her own. The cashier bagged everything one by one. Li Mei picked up the 3 heavy bags and walked straight out of the supermarket without looking back. I stood there clutching the bag of broad beans, my face burning with embarrassment. People came and went all around me. No one was staring, but I felt awkward and exposed anyway. Screw it. I'm buying it. I walked up to the counter and set the bag down. The cashier was a young girl. She glanced at me, and there was a hint of pity in her eyes. She'd probably seen the whole scene. 15 yuan and 98 cents. I pulled out my phone and opened the payment app. When my balance popped up, I froze. 21 yuan and 32 cents. After paying for this bag of broad beans, I'd have less than 6 yuan left. I stood there at the checkout, my head buzzing. I made 23,000 yuan a month. It wasn't a fortune, but it was far from bad for this city. For fuck's sake, I had to check my balance before buying a 15 yuan snack. I paid and walked out of the supermarket with the bag of broad beans in my hand. Li Mei was already gone. She'd probably gone home first. It was dark outside. The streetlights cast a dim yellow glow over the road. I held onto the bag, didn't open it, and just walked home with it dangling from my hand. I thought back to life before I got married. Back then, after work I'd meet up with the guys for barbecue, 200 or 300 yuan a meal, and then we'd go for beers afterward. I bought whatever I wanted, never hesitated as long as I could afford it. I didn't have a ton of clothes, but every single piece was something I liked. I glanced down at what I was wearing now. A faded gray t-shirt with a stretched out collar bought for me by Li Mei online. 40-something yuan, if I remembered right. A pair of black shorts with pilled hems, cheap street market stuff, a few dozen yuan. And a pair of flip-flops from the stall outside the supermarket, 15 yuan. The whole outfit cost less than 100 yuan total. I stood under the streetlight and thought about what Li Mei had been wearing. Her slippers were a new brand name pair. I'd gone to the mall with her to buy them. Even on sale they'd cost over 200 yuan. The floral dress she had on, she'd bought it on a mall trip by herself last month. I never asked how much it cost, but she'd tucked it straight into the closet without even showing me the tag. So it probably wasn't cheap either. And the charm on her phone, supposedly a limited edition, cost several hundred yuan. She'd mentioned it once and I hadn't thought much of it at the time. Li Mei made 3,500 yuan a month. She worked in admin at her company, 9 to 5, weekends off. I'd glanced at the total for that cart full of snacks today, over 500 yuan. She'd pulled out her phone and scanned the code without a second thought, totally casual. The first month after we got married, Li Mei told me men were bad with money, that I should hand over my salary card and she'd give me an allowance every month. I'd thought that made sense back then. She was careful with money, it wouldn't get wasted with her. We were building a life together, saving up for the future. I took home 23,000 a month. After the 7,000 plus mortgage payment, I had 15,000 left. After I gave it all to Li Mei, she transferred 2,000 yuan a month to me for spending money. That 2,000 had to cover lunch at work, transportation, and the occasional dinner with coworkers. 2,000 a month worked out to about 60 yuan a day. I'm a grown man, a supervisor at a mid-sized company. When I go out to lunch with coworkers, I still do the math in my head before ordering. A few times when friends invited me out for dinner, I made up an excuse to say no. It was the end of the month, and my allowance was almost gone. I'd thought Li Mei was being careful with money too, saving everything for our future. It never crossed my mind that she never hesitated to spend money on herself. But what about the things she bought for me? This t-shirt, she'd bought it on a whim to hit a free shipping minimum. Original price 59.9, on sale for 39.9. She'd even bragged about it, said she was thrifty for buying things on sale. I'd laughed and called her thoughtful back then. I stuffed the bag of broad beans into my pocket and walked slowly home. The whole walk I kept thinking, what is marriage anyway? Is it just her getting to live it up while I scrape by? Or is it two people working together to make a better life? I meant everything I said on our wedding day. A man can get by with worse clothes and worse food, I thought. It's all for the family, but now it hit me. My willingness to sacrifice had just become something she took for granted. When I got home, Li Mei had already opened all the snacks and was curled up on the sofa watching TV. Cherries, chips, chocolate spread across the coffee table, plus that open box of durian stinking up the whole room. She glanced up when I walked in, rolled her eyes at the bag in my hand and huffed. You actually bought it? That's all you care about, huh? I ignored her, slipped off my shoes, and went into the bedroom. I set the broad beans on the nightstand, sat down on the edge of the bed, and stared at that plain old packaging in a daze. Li Mei followed and leaned in the bedroom doorway. What are you mad now? No. I stood up, pulled off my t-shirt and headed for the shower. Chalet Tilda. Her voice softened, playful and cajoling. I didn't mean to stop you from getting snacks. Those broad beans just really aren't good, that's all. If you want something to eat, I'll get you something else. Want some beef jerky? I bought some today, remember? I turned to look at her. She was in soft loungewear, her hair tied up loosely, looking gentle and sweet. That was the side of her that had drawn me in before we got married. I'd thought she was sensible, thoughtful, caring. Li Mei, do you know how much of my allowance I have left this month? She blinked, surprised. Why? Are you running low already? It's only the middle of the month. I've got a little over 20 yuan left in my account. Why didn't you say something earlier? She frowned. But it's not like you need to spend much, right? The company has a cafeteria for lunch. You barely have any expenses. I don't want to talk about it. I turned and walked into the bathroom. The water poured down. I stood there leaning against the wall, eyes closed. 1 year of marriage, and I'd handed over almost 200,000 yuan of my salary. How much did Li Mei make each month? How much did she spend on herself? How much did she save? I had no clue. All I knew was her closet was full of clothes I'd never seen before. Her vanity was piled with new skincare and makeup, and she'd gotten the latest iPhone. And me? I hesitated before buying a single bag of broad beans. It felt like there was a lump in my chest, something I couldn't spit out and couldn't swallow down. After that, life went on as usual, but I didn't have the same hopes for our marriage anymore. I'm not the type to pick fights. A little cutesy act from Lee May, and I'd let it go. The broad bean incident blew over, but that bag stayed on my nightstand, unopened. Lee May saw it a few times, curled her lip, and said nothing. Until that afternoon. I was in a meeting at work when my phone buzzed. It was my mom. I declined the call and texted back saying I was in a meeting. She called again. A cold feeling dropped in my stomach. I apologized to my colleagues, stepped out of the conference room and answered. Mom? On the other end, my mom was sobbing hysterically, barely able to get words out. XIAOLEI ... Your dad. He got in a car accident ... He was hit. We're at Central Hospital ... My mind went completely blank. Mom, hold on. I'm on my way. I hung up, ran back to grab my jacket, said a quick word to my boss, and bolted out the door. On the taxi ride, I called my mom again. She'd calmed down a little, and managed to tell me what had happened in broken sentences. My dad had been out buying groceries on his electric scooter when a car hit him at an intersection. The driver had fled the scene. A passerby had called 120 for him, and he'd already been taken to the hospital. By the time I got to the hospital, my dad was already in the operating room. My mom was sitting on a bench in the hallway. Her hair was messy, her face streaked with tears. She looked completely hollow inside. Mom! I ran over to her. When she saw me, fresh tears spilled over. She clung tight to my hand. The doctor said, his leg's broken and there's internal bleeding. They're operating on him now. It's okay, Mom. Dad's always been tough. He'll be fine. I put my arm around her shoulders, but my own hands were shaking. Just then, a nurse walked over with a clipboard. Family member? Please come with me to handle the paperwork and pay the surgery deposit first. How much is it? 50,000 yuan for now. I nodded, said okay, and pulled out my phone to call Lee May. It rang a few times before she picked up. Hey Lee May. I kept my voice as steady as I could. My dad got in a car accident. He's in surgery at Central Hospital. They need a 50,000 yuan deposit first. Transfer 50,000 from my salary card to me, hurry. There was 2 seconds of silence on the other end. 50,000? Lee May sounded hesitant. Is your dad? Is it bad? He's in the operating room. What do you think? Well, do we have to pay right now? Can't they just do the surgery first and we pay later? They said the deposit has to be paid first. Just send me the money. More silence. Lee May? Did you hear me? Xiao Lei. I can't transfer the money. Right now. What? I thought I'd misheard her. What did you say? I said I can't do it right now. All my money's tied up in investments. I can't withdraw it. Investments? My dad's lying on an operating table. Right now, and you're telling me you can't get your money out of investments? My voice rose before I could stop it. This is an emergency. That's my father. Don't yell at me, Zhao Lei. Lia Mei's voice sharpened too. What about your sister then? I froze. What did you just say? Your sister has a job too. Why should we pay all the medical bills alone? Isn't she their kid too? My sister's out of town. I'm here at the hospital right now. I'm their son. I'm the one with them. Of course I should cover the cost first. My voice echoed down the hallway. A few people passing by turned to look. That doesn't mean we have to pay for all of it. Li Mei's tone went cold. Half at most. 25,000. She can cover the rest. I held the phone, and I could feel the blood rushing to my head. My mom sat beside me watching, her eyes red, her lips trembling. Li Mei, this is life-saving money, I know it is. I'm not saying I won't pay anything. Half isn't enough for you? Do you have any idea my dad's in surgery right now? That my mom's here falling apart? And you're arguing with me about half and half? Figure it out yourself then. I can't come up with 50,000 right now. With that, Li Mei hung up on me. I stared at the phone in my hand, listening to the dial tone, frozen. I took a deep breath, then another. I squeezed my mom's shoulder, told her wait here, Mom. Then walked to the end of the hallway and called one of my best friends. Lao Zhou, lend me 50,000. Urgent. What happened? My dad got in a car accident. He's in the hospital. They need 50,000 up front. 50,000? Is that enough? Send me your account number. 5 minutes later, the money came through, with an extra 2,000 yuan on top. I finished the paperwork and went back to the operating room doors. My mom was still sitting there, a little calmer now. I sat down next to her. She took my hand, hers were ice cold. What did Li Mei say? It's fine, Mom. The deposit's paid. Don't worry about it. She didn't ask any more questions. She just rested her head on my shoulder and her tears fell one by one onto the back of my hand. My dad's surgery lasted almost 4 hours. The lead surgeon came out and said it had gone well. The fracture had been set, the internal bleeding had stopped, and he'd just need plenty of rest to recover. When my mom heard that, her legs gave out and she nearly collapsed. By the time everything was settled and my dad was moved to a ward, it was past 10 o'clock at night. My sister had arrived too, her eyes red and puffy from crying. I told them both to stay with him, then went out to buy some food and water. I sat down on a bench outside the hospital building and lit a cigarette. I didn't usually smoke much, but today I needed one. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Li Mei. How's your dad? I stared at those words for a long time, then stuffed my phone back in my pocket. I didn't reply. Sometime after 2 in the morning, I dozed off in a chair by the hospital bed, half asleep. My mind was a mess. Flashes of my dad in the hospital bed, Li Mei saying half at most. Right before she hung up, my mom's face streaked with tears. When daylight broke, I went home for a little while. Li Mei was at her vanity putting on makeup. She turned when I walked in. How's your dad? I texted you, but you didn't reply. Surgery's done. He's gonna be okay. Good. She relaxed.
See?
I told you he'd be fine. Li Mei. I sat down on the edge of the bed and looked at her. Why wouldn't you pay? Her expression froze for a second, then went back to normal. I told you, all my money's in investments. I can't take it out. And I said I'd pay half, didn't I? What more do you want? Do you have any idea how it felt yesterday, standing outside that operating room, watching my mom cry, and not having 50,000 yuan to my name? My voice was calm, calmer than I'd expected. I had to borrow it from a friend. Well, you got it, didn't you? She turned back to her makeup. Your dad's fine now. You always make such a big deal out of everything. I watched her profile as she put on lipstick, and for the first time, the woman I'd shared a bed with for almost a year felt like a total stranger. Li Mei, I thought about it all night. Thought about what? A lot of things. Ever since we got married, you've held my salary card. I get 2,000 yuan a month for spending money. I hesitate before buying a 15 yuan bag of spiced broad beans. When my dad needed surgery money, I had to borrow it from a friend. And you? You buy durian, chocolate, limited edition phone charms without even blinking. Li Mei set down her lipstick and turned to me, her face going cold. Xiaolei, what is that supposed to mean? It means I need to rethink our marriage. Over 50,000 yuan? She stood up. You're making a fuss over this. It's not about the 50,000. Then what is it? Say it to my face. I looked her dead in the eye and spoke slowly, clearly. It's about finally seeing whether you care about me at all. About whether you care about my parents. Li Mei's face flushed bright red. She opened her mouth to say something, then didn't. Finally she grabbed her bag and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. My dad stayed in the hospital for over a week before being moved to a regular ward. They caught the driver too, he'd been drunk driving. The rest would be handled by the traffic police and the insurance company. It was just a matter of time. Li Mei came to visit once while he was in the hospital. She brought a bag of fruit, sat in the room for less than 20 minutes. Then got a phone call and left, saying she had work to deal with. My mom walked her to the door. She didn't say anything when she came back, but I could see the look in her eyes. I knew what it meant. My sister took a week off work to take care of Dad. My brother-in-law came by every day too, running errands and helping out however he could. My sister said she could cover any future expenses, but I told her not to worry, I'd handle it. The day Dad was discharged, I went to the bank and did one thing. I reported my salary card lost. Once the new card was activated, I switched all my automatic payments over to it. The day my salary hit the account, I stared at the balance on my phone and let out a long, slow breath. Lee May found out on the 4th day. When I got home from work that day, she was standing in the living room. The look on her face was like the sky right before a storm. Chalet. Her voice was loud enough to shake the ceiling. You reported your salary card lost? That's right. I hung up my coat, walked calmly over to the sofa and sat down. What is wrong with you? She marched right up to me. How dare you do this without telling me? It's my salary card. I can do whatever I want with it. Is there a problem? You! She was shaking with rage. Are you still holding that 50,000 yuan thing against me? I told you I wasn't refusing to pay. You weren't unable to pay. You just didn't want to. I cut her off. Lee May, we already talked about this. I don't want to go over it again. So what about your salary? Who's going to handle the money? From now on, I'll handle my own money. Lee May stared daggers at me, her eyes starting to redden. Chalet, you've changed. Yeah, I have. You weren't like this before. You used to do whatever I said. Oh, so you liked it better when I was the way I was before? I leaned back on the sofa and stared at the ceiling. A guy who has to ask his wife's permission to buy a bag of broad beans. A guy who has to beg his wife for money when his own dad needs surgery. Tears rolled down Lee May's face, but the look on her face wasn't sadness, it was anger. Chalet, women get married so their husbands can take care of them. What else is the point of getting married? Those words felt like a needle stabbing right into my chest. I sat up slowly and looked her right in the eye. Then what's the point for men? To fund a charity case? You're calling this charity? Her voice was sharp and shrill. Chalet, you call taking care of me charity? You make 3,500 yuan a month. After we got married, every cent of your money stayed yours to spend however you wanted. I handed over my whole salary to you, and you threw me 2,000 yuan a month as pocket money. You buy yourself clothes that cost hundreds, even thousands of yuan. The t-shirt you got me? It was 39 yuan on clearance. You buy yourself limited edition phone charms without a second thought. And I can't even afford a 15 yuan bag of spiced broad beans. The words came pouring out, and the tight weight I'd carried in my chest for so long finally lifted. If that's not charity, then what is it? Tell me. Lee May froze where she stood, her lips trembling, unable to get a single word out. Finally she stamped her foot, turned, and stormed into the bedroom, slamming the door shut behind her. We slept in separate rooms that night. I lay on the living room sofa under a thin blanket, staring up at the ceiling, and didn't close my eyes once the whole night. After that we fell into a cold war. I went to work as usual, stopped by the hospital after my shift, then went home. She, in a fit of pique, moved back to her parents' house. One day, right before I got off work, my mom called. She said Lee May's parents were over, sitting in the living room. What did they say? They said they want to talk to you. All right. I'll head over after work. I hung up and called my dad to ask how he was recovering. He said he was feeling much better, then paused and added, Chalet, your mom told me about what's going on between you and Lee May. Dad. Whatever you decide, we'll support you. Just make sure you're sure about it. His voice was hoarse. After work I went to my parents' place. As soon as I walked in, I saw my father-in-law and mother-in-law sitting in the living room, while my mom poured them tea. My father-in-law wore a dark blue polo shirt with a small designer logo on the collar. He looked neat and put together. Chalet, you're back. My mother-in-law stood up with a forced smile. How's your dad's recovery going? He's doing all right. I sat down in a nearby chair. You two are here to talk about Lee May and me, aren't you? My father-in-law cleared his throat and set down his teacup. Xiao Lei, my wife talked to Li Mei, and we've both spoken to her about what happened. She was definitely in the wrong about the medical bills. I nodded and said nothing. My mother-in-law picked up the conversation. But Xiao Lei, you have to understand where she's coming from. She was just trying to save money, to plan for your future. Think about it, once you have kids, the expenses will only pile up. She's careful with money, and it's all for the sake of your family. Mom, I looked at her, why don't you ask Li Mei how much she's actually saved since we got married? My mother-in-law's expression shifted slightly. Li Mei and I have been married almost a year. My salary card has been in her hands the whole time. I make $23,000 a month, and after I hand it over, she gives me $2,000 back as allowance. In a year, after covering basic household costs, I've given her roughly 170,000 to 180,000 yuan. I paused. You say she's careful with money? But her closet has over 30 new pieces of clothing. Her vanity has more skincare and makeup bottles than we have spice jars in the kitchen. Her slippers cost over 200 yuan a pair. She has the latest iPhone. Careful with money? Where? On what? My mother-in-law's face darkened. She set down her teacup, her tone hardening. Li Mei never had to go without growing up. We're not wealthy, but we always gave our daughter whatever she wanted. We can't expect her to lower her standards now that she's married. She shouldn't have to suffer just to be with you, Mom. I smiled faintly and pointed at myself. Look at me. My in-laws' eyes fell on me. I was wearing a plain t-shirt, jeans, and sneakers. The whole outfit probably cost less than 300 yuan, and the shoes were from before we got married. I never went without growing up either. My parents had me and my sister, and they paid for our schooling, put food on the table, clothes on our backs. They never skimped on us. I met my mother-in-law's gaze. But this past year of marriage has been the hardest of my life. I have to check my bank balance before I buy a 15.98 yuan bag of spiced broad beans. Do you think it gets harder than that? My father-in-law had stayed quiet this whole time, sipping his tea. I noticed his gaze drift down to the polo shirt he was wearing, and his face tensed with awkwardness. I looked at him and asked, Dad, did Li Mei buy that shirt you're wearing? 599 yuan, right? My father-in-law's hand stilled. He touched the hem of the shirt and nodded. Li Mei has good taste. And she's very thoughtful. Yeah, she's very thoughtful. I nodded. But, did you know? She hasn't bought a single thing for my parents since we got married. I tapped the t-shirt I had on. Do you know how much this cost? Your daughter bought it too. Original price 59.9 marked down to 39.9. Does that seem fair to you? The living room went quiet. My father-in-law's face flushed, then paled. My mother-in-law opened her mouth, then closed it again. My mom sat beside me, never once chiming in, but I saw her hands trembling slightly. My father-in-law sat in silence for a long time, then sighed and stood up. It's getting late. We should head back. My mother-in-law tried to say something else, but he gave her a tug, and she followed him toward the door. Right at the doorway, my mother-in-law turned around, her voice sharp with resentment. Xiao Lei, both our families sat down and agreed your salary card would be in Li Mei's care. You agreed to it. And besides, you and your sister are both your parents' children. Your dad's medical bills should be split evenly. Li Mei wasn't wrong about that. Mom, I stood up, my voice calm. We agreed she'd handle the money because we thought she'd manage it well, not so she could spend it all on herself. As for the medical bills, my sister already paid 30,000 yuan up front, and will get all that money back from the driver's insurance eventually. Even so, Li Mei is my wife, and she didn't want to pay a single cent. That's not about money. That's about attitude. My mother-in-law had no reply. She turned and left with her husband. The second the door clicked shut, my mom finally broke down crying. Xiao Lei, I had no idea you were going through this, ... She held my hand, her voice choked up. Why didn't you tell us sooner? You always keep everything to yourself, ... I put my arm around her shoulders, my throat tight. It's okay, Mom. I can handle it. When I got home that night, Li Mei was waiting for me in the living room. My parents came to see you? She got straight to the point. Xiao Lei, Li Mei took a deep breath, like she was struggling to keep her temper. Let's talk about this properly. Go ahead, about the salary card. You're not going to give it back to me, are you? That's right. Then how are we supposed to live? We'll each manage our own money. I'll cover the utilities and household bills. Everything else, we pay for ourselves. Li Mei scoffed. Separate finances? What kind of marriage is that? Then, you tell me, when you were in charge of the money, did you ever treat me like your husband? Or was I just a cash machine to you? Zhao Lei. She shot to her feet. That's out of line. I didn't marry you for your salary. I'm not saying you did. I stood up too. But look at what you've done this past year. You never hesitate to spend on yourself, but you nickel and dime me over every little thing. When my dad was in surgery and I called you for money, your first thought was to tell me to go ask my sister. Li Mei, be honest. What am I to you? Tears spilled down Li Mei's face, but they weren't tears of surrender. They were tears of aggrieved anger. Zhao Lei, you think this is easy for me? You think I wanted to be in charge of your money? I stress every day about how to manage it, how to make it grow, how much we'll need for a house for kids. It's not like I have it easy. How did you manage it? Investments? How much did you put in? She froze, then faltered. I put some into investments. Where's the ledger? Let me see. I don't keep a ledger. Fine then. Show me your bank statements. I want to see how much we've saved this year. Li Mei stood rooted to the spot. Well, I spent some of it. Her voice got smaller and smaller. How much? On what? She said nothing. Looking at her, the anger in me faded, replaced by a tiredness I couldn't put into words. I walked over to the coffee table, picked up that bag of spiced broad beans and tore open the seal. Li Mei, before we got married, I thought you were such a great girl, pretty, cheerful, good with money. After we married, I realized you really are good with money. You just take good care of your own life. I poured one bean into my mouth. It tasted exactly like I remembered from when I was little. My life? I can't even afford this. I set the bag down on the coffee table and turned to walk into the bedroom. Li Mei followed and stopped in the doorway. Zhao Lei, if you're unhappy, we can renegotiate. I can give you more allowance every month. Would that help? It is not about the allowance. I stood by the window, my back to her. It's about respect. About how you see me. What do you want from me then? I turned to face her. I want to know, what am I to you really? Li Mei opened her mouth, but no answer came out. We stood there in stalemate, like two people on the edge of a cliff, neither willing to take a step forward, neither willing to turn back. Days dragged on in that frozen silence. I never gave back the salary card, and Li Mei never demanded it again. We lived under the same roof, but we might as well have been roommates. We ate separately, lived separate lives. She spent her evenings curled up in the bedroom on her phone. I slept on the fold-out bed in the study. 2 months went by like that. In those 2 months, I thought about a lot of things. How we met, how we ended up together, how we'd slowly turned into this. We'd met through a matchmaker, a blind date, to put it bluntly. The matchmaker said Li Mei was a great catch, pretty, cheerful, and from a decent family. When we met, she really was just that nice. We clicked easily. She had a lovely smile and she knew how to take care of people. We dated for half a year, then our parents met and talked about marriage. Everything fell into place naturally. On our wedding day, I stood at the hotel entrance greeting guests. Li Mei stood beside me in her white wedding dress, smiling happily. I held her hand and promised myself I'd treat her well for the rest of my life. The first month after we married, Li Mei suggested she handle the finances. She said men were careless with money and bad at budgeting. That if I gave her my salary card, she'd cover all household expenses and give me an allowance every month. I thought it over, decided she had a point, and handed over the card. The first month she gave me 2,500 yuan. I said it wasn't enough. She said it was, that men didn't need that much money, and that having too much just led to reckless spending. I didn't argue. I figured 2,500 would be fine if I was careful with it. The second month it was 2,000. The third month still 2,000. And it stayed at 2,000 after that. It's not like I never protested. But every time I brought it up, she'd call me stingy, ask what I needed so much money for, and accuse me of not trusting her. She had an endless list of excuses. I could never win an argument with her, and I didn't feel like fighting about it, so I just put up with it. But looking back now, every one of her excuses came down to the same thing. My money was her money, and her money was still her money. One weekend 2 months later, Li Mei got up early, completely out of character, and made a full breakfast. Eggs, bacon, toast, milk, all laid out neatly. I sat down at the table, looked at the spread, and knew she had something she wanted to say. Sure enough, halfway through the meal, Li Mei set down her chopsticks, looked at me, and said, "Xiaolei, let's make this work." I've been thinking a lot these past 2 months. Her eyes were a little red. I know I messed up before. I'll do better. The way I acted when your dad was in the hospital, I was wrong. I spoke without thinking. I'm sorry. I took a bite of toast and said nothing. But Xiaolei, you have to understand me too. My parents spoiled me growing up. I admit I'm selfish, that I'm used to putting myself first. But I married you because I really wanted to build a life with you. When you took your salary card back all of a sudden, I just felt so insecure. Insecure? I set down my fork. Li Mei, your idea of security is having my money in your hands to spend however you want. What about me? Where's my security? I couldn't even guarantee I'd have the money to help my own parents when they got sick. Where was my security then? Li Mei's eyes reddened further. We can work something out. From now on, we'll talk about any big expenses together. And I can increase your allowance. Li Mei, I don't want an allowance. I cut her off. I'm a 30-year-old man. I make over 20,000 yuan a month. I don't need my wife giving me pocket money. Then what do you want? Her voice wavered like she was about to cry. I was quiet for a moment, then said, my terms are simple. We each manage our own salaries. I'll cover the big household bills, utilities, property management, heating. Everything else, we pay for ourselves. If you want to make this marriage work, that's how it has to be. If that's not good enough for you, then we should go our separate ways. Tears finally spilled down Li Mei's face. Xiaolei, you just don't want to be with me anymore. That's not it. I want a marriage where we respect each other and both pull our weight. I looked at her. Li Mei, do you think our marriage right now is fair? She didn't answer. She just kept her head down, tears dripping one by one onto the table. After that day, Li Mei went back to her parents' house. Most of her things were still at our place. She only took one suitcase with her. I lived alone in that apartment, and it felt so empty. Sometimes I'd lie awake at night on the fold-out bed in the study, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything over and over in my head. I thought about the days my dad was in the hospital. My sister had rushed back from out of town overnight, and she'd cried the second she walked into his room. My brother-in-law took time off work to help, running errands left and right without a single complaint. My mom stayed at the hospital every single day, napping in a chair when she got tired. When things got hard, our family pulled together. No one kept score of who did more. But Li Mei, as my wife, as part of this family, she never even called once to ask how he was doing. That 50,000 yuan had mattered more to her than my dad's life. A week later, Li Mei's parents called me and said they wanted to talk again. I went over to their place. I sat in their living room, with her parents across from me and Li Mei beside them, her eyes a little puffy. Her father spoke first, his tone much softer than last time. Xiaolei, her mother and I have been doing a lot of thinking lately. We spoiled Li Mei growing up, and she definitely handled some things wrong. We've talked to her thoroughly, and she knows she made a mistake. Her mother nodded beside him. Xiaolei, for the sake of your marriage, give her another chance. She said you can handle the money from now on. She won't interfere with the finances anymore. I looked at Li Mei. Her eyes were red, staring at the floor, saying nothing. Li Mei, what do you think? I asked her. She looked up at me, her lips trembling, and said, Xiaolei, I know I was wrong. But these past 2 months made me realize one thing. Maybe we really aren't right for each other. Her mother panicked. What are you saying? Li Mei waved her off, still looking at me. You're right, Xiaolei. This past year of marriage I really only thought about myself. I thought marriage was just finding someone who'd treat me well, spoil me, take care of me. She took a deep breath. But Zhao Lei, do you know what? All my friends' husbands let their wives handle their salaries. Even when they fight, no matter who's right or wrong, the husband is always the one to apologize first. These past 2 months you ignored me, wouldn't talk to me, slept in the study. It hurt so bad. I thought, if this is what the rest of my life is going to be like, I don't want it. The living room went so quiet you could hear the clock ticking on the wall. I looked at Li Mei, and she looked back at me. Between us was a coffee table, 2 months of Cold War, a whole year of resentment and disappointment. Li Mei, I said, my voice a little rough, do you remember what we said on our wedding day? She blinked, caught off guard. I said I'd take care of you for the rest of my life. I meant it. This past year has been hard, but I never once regretted marrying you. I paused. But lately I've been thinking, maybe I was so good to you that you started taking it for granted. You forgot that I need you to be good to me too. Li Mei couldn't hold back her tears any longer. They streamed down her face. The day my dad was admitted to the hospital, I stood in that hospital hallway for 4 hours. All I could think about was how badly I'd failed as a son if something happened to him, and I couldn't even come up with the money to save his life. And my wife, the woman I slept next to every night, her first thought was to tell me to go ask my sister for the money. My own eyes stung. Li Mei, in that moment, something in me went cold. Her father sighed beside her and hung his head. Her mother covered her mouth, her eyes glistening too. Li Mei broke down crying. Zhao Lei. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know you mean it. But Li Mei, some things break and stay broken. You can't put them back together. I stood up, keeping my voice as steady as I could. It's not that I don't want to treat you well. I'm just scared. I'm scared that if my parents get sick again, I'll feel that same helplessness all over again. I'm scared that for the rest of my life, I'll always be the one giving more, enduring more, settling for less. 2 months later, we officially filed for divorce. The day we walked out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, the sky was bright blue and the sun was shining. Li Mei was wearing a white button-down shirt, looking put together. We stood on the steps, glanced at each other, and neither of us said a word. Finally I spoke first. When are you coming to get your things? This weekend. I'll have my dad drive me. All right. After a quiet moment she added, Zhao Lei, there's still 30,000 yuan of your salary tied up in investments. I'll pay you back when it matures. Don't bother. I will, she insisted. I owe you that much. I didn't argue. I just nodded. She walked down the steps, then paused a few paces away, and turned around. Zhao Lei, I'm sorry. Then she walked away quickly and didn't look back. I stood there watching her until she disappeared around the corner. The sun was warm on my skin. I felt something loosen in my chest, all that frustration I'd bottled up for a whole year, finally gone. Life after divorce went back to how it was before I got married. I linked my salary card back to my own payment apps. Every payday I saved half first and spent the rest however I wanted. On weekends I'd meet up with the guys for barbecue, 200 or 300 yuan a meal, then go for beers afterward. Stay out as late as I wanted. No more sneaking glances at my bank balance before paying. I bought my parents each a few new outfits. Got my dad a massage chair and my mom a gold necklace. My mom turned this way and that in the mirror with the necklace on, scolding me for wasting money, while she couldn't stop smiling. My dad's leg healed really well. He doesn't need a cane anymore. Once I was at the mall and saw a nice t-shirt. I tried it on, it fit perfectly. It was a little over 100 yuan. I stood in front of the mirror hesitating for ages. Then I smacked my forehead. I make my own decisions now. What was I even hesitating for? I bought two. I stepped into marriage, then walked out before it all came crashing down. Now I get why people say marriage is a grave. But I think that only happens when you marry the wrong person. The freedom to buy a bag of spiced broad beans, that was the line between living with dignity and not, in my marriage. Marriage should lift both people up, not let one person climb all over the other to get ahead. That bag of broad beans went stale before I could finish it, and I threw it away. But it had already done its job. It made me see the truth about my marriage, before it was too late to walk away. This story reveals the fundamental truth about marriage. A good marriage is a mutual journey of support, not one-sided provision and exploitation. The wife took full control of her husband's salary, spent lavishly on herself, yet treated him with extreme stinginess, even stopping him from buying an inexpensive snack. When her father-in-law needed urgent surgery after a car accident, she shirked responsibility and prioritized her own interests over family safety. A 15.981 bag of spiced broad beans became the final straw that broke the marriage, laying bare the long-grieving disappointment in this unequal relationship. Marriage is never about endless compromise from only one side. Respect is the cornerstone of affection. Financial consideration and equal dignity are prerequisites for lasting companionship. Imbalanced relationships will eventually collapse. Only mutual dedication and mutual cherishing can lead to a stable and long future.